Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Friday, the 8th of November. November? What a flashback. It's Friday, the 8th of March, 2019. And I'm just standing here for a few minutes prior to the live stream, just listening to the early morning bird song. Now, it's not as loud as I remember it from many years ago. But nonetheless, it is very, very relaxing to hear that early morning bird song, just to sit back and let it percolate through. And that, unfortunately, is something that the vast majority of people, particularly those who live in towns and cities, in the first instance, of course, they don't necessarily have the time or are able to create the time, even for a few seconds, just to stop and take in that background bird song. But unfortunately, it's disappearing. And it's disappearing because of the rapid advancement of the telecoms industry. And as we have seen from Ted Wheeler in the United States, and that video is on the live feed from Buck Fastly a little over, 10 days ago or so. And Ted Wheeler makes it very clear that as the head honcho of the telecoms industry in the US, the priority is the absolute rollout. And as he says, nothing must get in its way. Well, I don't know what it's going to take, but maybe it is going to take some terrible, terrible tragedies for people to realize that this advancement of science may be an advancement in terms of short-term revenue streams for the global banksters and the socio-psychopaths that effectively execute their slavery on this plantation. Well, basically they may get the short-term gain, but in reality, the long-term implication for humanity is not that great. And it's the little things like missing the bird song that, might just actually wake people up. Because, when I was up in Gateshead with Mark Steele last year, and he took me for a walk mid-morning around a local park, and he said, listen for the bird song and tell me how many birds you see. Well, I think in the space of about an hour, I heard no bird song, and we saw 4 birds flying, 2 pigeons and 2 magpies. Nothing beyond that. Well, of course, the telecoms industry is marching ahead, and thanks for all those people that have contacted me to offer to support a 5G tour later this year. And I know that there are people all around the country who are organising their own local events, and that is absolutely fantastic, because that is what it's going to take. Initiative in every single community. What's occurred in the anti-fracking campaign over the past 6 years now needs to be expanded and accelerated, because unlike fracking, where we've been on the case now for a little over, 7 years nearly, but we don't have that luxury with 5G, because the telecoms industry are looking to push this out in 16 cities around the UK at the earliest possible opportunity, and then ramp it out countrywide beyond that. In reality, I think it's being rolled out a lot quicker, and the industry and the government are simply trying to lull people into this false sense of, oh, well, it's only a trial in 16 cities. Yeah, well, the trial might be on day one, and, when nothing catastrophic appears to have occurred, then it'll be switched on right across the country. And the reason it'll get switched on is because communities have not latched on. They have not done their research. They have not realized the threat that this 5G technology puts their community under. And of course, as I think it's important to keep restating, in the Senate hearing a little over a month ago now, Senator Blumenthal had the telecoms industry absolutely on the ropes. And they admitted that there is not a single academic, scientific or industry study that is in the public domain or which could be produced, which declares 5G frequencies to be safe. But no regard, because basically the general public will simply acquiesce, because they'll be told that you can download an entire Hollywood movie in 2.4 seconds. Well, you know, who has problems streaming now? Okay, maybe in a few locations, but what we have is certainly adequate. But it's not for us. Of course, it's for the rapid expansion of the Internet of Things, where literally every product that is produced will have its own IP address. But then you add on the culling of the trees, and, you know, here I am in, you know, my field in the southwest of England, and basically I have the luxury of being surrounded by fields and trees. But yesterday, when I was driving to the UK Column studio in Plymouth, I noticed that trees are being hacked all the way down the side of the A38, and trees are being hacked on some of the arterial roads around Plymouth. And this has nothing at all to do with ecology. It has nothing at all to do with the husbanding of the trees. No, it's all to do with the rollout of 5G antenna, which have to be installed every 300 meters. And the reason for this is because of the intent to implement driverless autonomous vehicles at the earliest possible opportunity. And you know, if you think smart motorways are being designed to be smart for you or I, think again. You know, the smart motorway is being designed so that in the not too distant future, quite possibly within the next decade, 2 decades at the absolute outside, any vehicle that is only capable of manual control will probably not be allowed on the motorway network of this country. So the only way in which you'll be able to trip up and down the country quickly by road is in an autonomous vehicle, which, you know, opens up a whole other can of worms. And we're already seeing the media starting to prepare the next generation for not having private car ownership. It talks about the numbers, or the lack of numbers, of young people now taking their driving tests, of acquiring vehicles, and you making more use of public transport or Uber, when in the future it will just be autonomous vehicles. And of course, that's the thin end of a very fat wedge, which ultimately goes to nobody owning anything. And that may seem like a massive stretch for a lot of people right now, but like I said, I don't profess to have any special insight. I have simply read the scripts, and the scripts are out there, and you might want to start with the document produced by Maurice Strong way back, was it 1992? And this was rolled out as Agenda 21, but they're behind schedule, so of course that's now Agenda 30. And that's just the 5G is just one example of the cancer of science, or should that be the cancer-causing science? Well, on the other side, of course, we have an industry that is desperately trying to ensure that as many people as possible contract some form of cancer in the course of their life, and that's, of course, Big Pharma. And, you know, it is now openly stated that 1 in every 3 people is likely to contract some form of cancer during the course of their time on this mortal coil. Within the next 7 to 10 years, that will increase to, you know, 1 in 2 people, and it's anticipated that by 2040, pretty much everyone will at some point contract some form of cancer during the course of their life. And of course, as far as the establishment's concerned, that's all good, because it accelerates the end-of-life process, and those people who contract cancer are no longer of any use on the plantation. So, you know, basically they might as well just die. And, you know, chemo and radiotherapy is the palliative, with a 2.7 efficacy rate. So you got a 97.3 chance of it being accelerated towards your demise if you take the chemo and or radiotherapy. And of course, you've got a 2.7 chance of survival. So it's actually a lot worse than Russian roulette. Well, those who have been working desperately to try and find a cure or a very effective treatment for cancer are, of course, persecuted, prosecuted, and now we find attempting to be extradited. And I would implore people who have a bit of time to watch last night's episode of Humanity versus Insanity. This is episode number 114 with Lynn Thayer. Now, Lynn is David Noakes' partner. She was the biochemist that helped him to develop an effective form of GC math. Now, Lynn's life has been in abeyance for the last 4 years now, since the premises of Immunobiotech, David Noakes' company, were raided by the MHRA. This is a totally unilateral decision. There was no court process. They simply decided that they had to shut down the production of this effective cancer treatment because it was getting far too much traction and far too many people were starting to take an interest, and it was starting to become a serious threat to the outrageous revenue stream provided by forcing chemo and radiotherapy onto unwitting recipients who believed that this was the best that modern science, medical science, could offer. Oh, how grateful Big Pharma is for people's ignorance and for their willingness to subject themselves to the mainstream for their entire worldview, for everything they hold dear, for everything they believe in. Yet, you only got to scratch the surface and find that veneer basically is covering a phenomenal nest of evil, particularly within the corporatocracy. So Lynn, who wasn't charged with anything in the UK, so if there was any concern, obviously the MHRA would have produced the files to the CPS and they would have charged her alongside David Noakes. But there was nothing that the MHRA apparently could pin on Lynn. But the French seem to think that they have a case, and so for the past 2 years, Lynn has been resisting the attempts by the French to extradite her to France. Now, this comes to a head on Tuesday at the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand in London, where Lynn will be facing an extradition hearing. And it's imperative that we demonstrate to the courts that Lynn has massive support. Of course, the legal system and Big Pharma are doing everything they possibly can to keep this very, very quiet until such time as, in their minds, they get their extradition order, and then they'll make a big splash about it and put out all their BS headlines, just like the MHRA and the BBC did during the Newman hearing that David Noakes went through before sentencing last November. So I will be there at the Royal Courts next Tuesday morning. If you want to hook up, then meet up outside between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. And let's make sure that courtroom is packed and that the MHRA and the judiciary see that an increasing number of people are starting to see through the corruption and the desperation of Big Pharma and its henchman, the MHRA. The Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency, a pseudo-government department staffed almost entirely by ex-pharmaceutical industry employees and a few ex-police officers to do their corporate enforcement. So that's Tuesday, the 12th of March, 2019. And let's see this charade end. Let's make it very clear to the establishment that this would be a massive own goal. If the genie got out of the bottle with the sentencing of David Noakes, that genie is going to go on the rampage should Lynn Thayer be thrown to the wolves, or in this case the French equivalent of the MHRA, to potentially be put on remand for a further 2 years. Now, as we discussed last night, the European arrest warrant criteria is very clear. and that is that the moment an arrest warrant is requested or issued by a nation state, then the state in which the country, in which the individual is currently living, has 60 days to determine whether or not to proceed with that extradition. Lynn has been in a state of limbo for 4 years, but it's been 2 years since the French initiated the extradition process. So please, please, please watch last night's episode of Humanity vs. Insanity. I'll put a link beneath this morning's live stream. And please share it around. And if you are able to come along to the Royal Courts in the Strand next Tuesday at 9:30, then it'll be wonderful to hook up with you. Now, meanwhile, we're cracking on with putting the dates together for the 5G tour, which it looks like it's going to be basically from late May through to mid-July at the moment, and then maybe again in the autumn, we'll see. But certainly the first phase will be through late spring and early summer. But hey, don't wait for us, because if you feel that you really need to get this rolling in your community, then go ahead, organize your own events. Obviously, any help that we can offer, we'll do whatever we can. But it is so crucial that communities all around the country become aware of the implications of this cancer of science and the rollout of 5G. And backdrops like this and the bird song will be things very much of the past, possibly within a generation, if we are not able to bring sanity to this rapidly advancing insanity of technology. And that's not being Luddite in any way, shape or form. It's simply demanding that due process is followed and the precautionary principle is adhered to. And that is that unless something is proven unequivocally to be safe, then it's not rolled out on the public. And that sacrifice zones and collateral are terms that are pushed into the vocabulary of a rampant corporatocracy that is pushed into history and something else. And I don't think that something else is yet in our consciousness, but it is imperative that we keep moving towards creating a society that has humanity's best interest at heart. And that's all of humanity, not a rampant socio-psychopathic elite living high off the hog on the backs of the slaves on the plantation. And how that unfolds is entirely down to how much effort each and every one of us is prepared to put into bringing that about. So thanks for joining me this morning. I will be back on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. and hopefully we'll see a lot of you outside the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand on Tuesday morning at 9:30. You have a great weekend, and I'll catch you with you on Monday morning.